Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Logan, and welcome to tonight's Live from the View program, produced weekly by the Community Arts of Bellevue. Tonight, we're going to explore with two professionals the branding strategies that make up marketing campaigns for theatrical productions. As a producer and a director, I can tell you how important these elements are for any theater that you're doing. In fact, they're so important that it's almost as if they're a character in the show. The complexity with which we make those decisions is something that we hope feels seamless and that you don't even think about it. It just registers and it works for you. But a lot of work goes into that effortlessness. I had to get my words right. But right now, I would like to introduce to you two amazing people that live right here in Nashville, Tennessee. I'd like to welcome to the show Laura and Tony Matula. The company Matula has become one of Nashville's premier branding companies. And although they operate right here in Nashville, their work has been noticed across the country, in fact, across the globe, London in particular, New York, other cities. Their work is fantastic. And please welcome Laura and Tony Matula.
Oh, hey, Matt.
Guys.
Didn't see you there.
Yeah.
Hey,
oh, wow.
Matt.
We just happened to stumble into your living room. Look at that. I'm so glad that you're joining us tonight. For those that don't know, I have worked with Tony and Laura for almost close to 10 years now, or we're about at 10 years. I'm not sure the exact date, but we have a long history working together, specifically in the theater in a couple different areas. Now, I will give you a bit of a warning, as Tony and Laura can attest. We are people who wear lots of hats. So sometimes our conversation may stray a little off subject. But I do feel like the hats that we wear in particular have made us better artists and even better in business. But they are dear friends of mine that I think of as family, and I'm so grateful for every professional opportunity we also get a chance to work together. So, Tony and Laura, I would love just if you could give us a little snapshot of your background. So pre us working together. I know that it's complex, and I know that you guys met at Berkeley. Is that correct?
Berklee College of Music in Boston, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So going to Berkeley, what of the arts actually led you to Berkeley?
Well, I was a. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay.
Well, oh wait.
Wait,
you go first.
Are we gonna do this all night?
just the beginning. Just the beginning. Okay,
I was a vocal performance major as well as a co-major with music business management because I knew I wanted to do business and entrepreneurship and of some kind with a vocal performance major. And I played flute and piano as well, but voice seemed like the easiest choice. So I went to study voice, and Tony, I met there on the third day of school, and he was a jazz drum set performance major.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I did music all in high school, and I didn't want to really do anything else. I did like start the design kind of career then. I worked at an internet service provider, which to you guys that may not know what that is, that's like kind of Xfinity now, but like we used to have to dial up our computers. So I used to work there, and on the side I would make websites, but music.
And these are like old school websites.
Yeah, old school, like full HTML coding. Then decided that music was like my number one and the thing that I wanted to do. So went to Berkeley, and
we met in like third day, and then that was it. We got married while we were sophomores in college. So
yeah,
amazing sophomores in college. It is
yeah.
And that's so. That was a long time ago, and you've done a lot since. So for you two, you met, which is awesome. After Berkeley, what was your next step that then obviously we're going to get to you coming to Nashville?
Honestly, our next step was Nashville. So I finished school in 3 years, and he had already dropped out. The joke at Berkeley is you'll never be successful if you finish.
You graduated.
Like John Mayer and like other students like that went there. And essentially, like if you graduate, you won't be successful. It's the joke. I'm actually still working on finishing my degree there. But yeah, my sister lived in Nashville, and we wanted to be near her and her kids. And the music industry was here, and my degree was in business management of music. So we were like, we came to visit. We loved it. We literally moved in 2003. We graduated high school 2000. We moved 2003 after college to Nashville.
It was just such a different I mean,
it was a small town.
Say how Nashville, I mean, it was still, Nashville, but it wasn't quite the Nashville that, I think we all know today. And I mean, I think we were fortunate enough that when we came down here, we didn't actually start doing like design right away. But we were able to like live in that scene that really kind of started doing that a lot more. And the restaurant scene and the music that kind of transitioned from country music to
everything
alternative and Americana and rock and pop. And it just really became
kind of all grew while we were here. Like
Right.
It was really small when we got here, and we were like, 21, 22. We
Right.
were babies. So trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our lives. And I mean, do you want us to go on from there, or?
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting is, so that's like what got you here, and the basis of Nashville is so, I think the growth of Nashville is an important part of your story. Moving next, I sort of think of, I personally know where you were when I met you guys, which I think was both pivotal for both of you. You were in separate positions, but very pivotal, that then led to what Matula is today as a company. Mm-hmm. So from moving here, if you could give us kind of like a connection to where then I met you, where you were.
Yeah, it was, here's the interesting thing. I think Laura and I I don't know how far back we need to go, like truly, but like we've always been a lover of the arts, a lover of creative. And we've
always worked together.
Yeah. I mean, obviously we met each other, and even though our Matula wasn't informed technically till, 2007, 2006, like we've always worked together. So if it was just me doing designs or photography or whatever it was, like Laura was so heavily involved, even though it may not have had her name on it necessarily. Yeah. And so I feel like, it's really like I feel like any creative out there, if they love the arts, if they love creative, they just have to figure out like, how can they incorporate that into the world?
Well, and Tony did that. I think when you met him, he was still at Dell, right?
Yeah.
No, he had just moved on.
Yeah.
He had and he had started to incorporate design into his work at Dell, and then he had moved on to be a full-time designer for another company. And then he had gone out on his own. I think he had just gone out on his own right before you met him. And I had a long-term position for a rock musician and a record label. So you met me when we were at the label, and
you also really like, going to Berkeley. There is now a musical theater department through Boston Conservatory, but really at Berkeley there was no musical theater. Like,
and I had wanted to study musical theater. I just didn't.
It just wasn't available,
and it wasn't available. So I just did voice. And then when I had Elisa, our daughter, I decided, you know what? I'm just going to find an ad in the paper and audition for a musical theater show at a community theater. And I did. And I had kind of been doing that a little bit part-time while I worked at the record label. And that's when I auditioned for you.
For Guys and Dolls.
Which was one of your first shows. And I got that after a series of things. And then
I'm selfish, and I'm super selfish in that, I obviously at the time, was a designer, photographer, and Laura gets this, show at this new theater company. And I'm like, I'm going to meet with the guy.
Tony goes, well, I want to take your picture.
I go, I'm going to meet with the guy because I want to make the poster, because actually we had started, because Laura's, again, very early musical theater career. She was doing some shows at Street Theater Company. And I kind of did that there. I was like, how could I make posters? Could I, do whatever it is to help?
And I think that goes back to our teamwork, right? So like if I was doing something, I always wanted him connected somehow, and vice versa. So we always like talked about every project together, even when like he wasn't acting in Guys and Dolls, obviously, but for him, it was like, how can I be a part of this project and how can we make it as great as possible? And that's sort of when we had, you guys were like, you and Tony went out for Patterson House, like drinks.
Yeah.
And
which was scheduled
for like 5 hours.
Yeah, it was supposed to be that, right? Remember, it was supposed to be like, 30 minutes or whatever. And of course, Laura's texting, like, where are you?
Like, are you okay?
And I'm like,
did you get kidnapped?
I'm like, I have no idea what time it is, but I'm still here with this guy, Matt Logan, and we're still talking about like art and everything. And I think it was like daytime when we first started, and then it was like night by the time we left.
Go ahead.
Well, no, I think going to that point, I mean, I think what takes us further into the night as we talk about our collaboration is there was such a meeting of the minds in the sense of, oh, wow, we're very different, but you guys view art and so much of career and passion in the same way that I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there was a connection even to both of you, because like I got emails as soon as we started the company from Shalene even saying, you got to hear this girl's voice. Like Laura's amazing. And yeah. And so, and the same thing is like, Laura was like, you should meet my husband. You should meet my husband.
Right.
And then we did that fundraiser and we had some Studio 10 early stuff that I was doing. And Tony was like, excuse me.
Oh, sure.
I think you can have some help. You're like, I really think
I see what you're trying to do. Let me just put it in our Matula dryer real quick and like see what comes out on fluff. Yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of, so what I want to pause for a minute and kind of talk about is once again, could you express, if we were even sitting here talking to younger generations or older generations or even our own, the value of crazily wearing as many hats as we do?
Mm-hmm.
How does that influence the success of the work?
Yeah, we have a lot of shelves, I think, for a lot of hats, right?
We have a lot of shelves. We call it like the Slashy Awards.
Yeah.
Like
it's.
What does it mean when I say you wear a bunch of hats? I don't think people get that by.
Well, I think like if we could, first of all, I think if I could synthesize it, we are a company that does multiple things. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when you go to do a project, you have one person make your designs. Like say you have a new restaurant. Let's say, we've worked with a lot of restaurants in town, like Cinema or something. You have somebody design your logo and your like brand, your identity, right? Then you have someone take photos of the restaurant. Then you have someone to make like a commercial for the restaurant. And then you have,
menu design and print design.
Menu design and print design, people who deal with the printers for you, like all of that stuff. But we do all of that, right? So like when it comes to working in theater specifically, it's like you don't have multiple companies coming in to make all of your marketing. You have one company. Mm-hmm. So what that means is from the ground up, we are helping to storyboard what the entire identity of the look of the show is with the director. And in almost every case, it was you, obviously, at Studio 10. And so I direct for camera, I storyboard, I edit video.
You're probably in the show.
I'm probably in the show. Tony does, he started in graphic design and then started taking photos, teaching himself to take photos because he hated the photos that people were sending him to use on posters and things like that. And he's like, I wonder if I could take a photo. And then that kind of transitioned into filming. And so we're doing all of that as well as working with like marketing teams to really help plan the marketing of something. And I don't know, does that kind of cover what
I think to add to that, I think that, for us, and this is not even just necessarily like in our work, but like, I feel like we are people that like we look at the big picture. And we have this saying in our company that everything matters. And it's easy to say, well, sure, everything matters. But like, what does that mean? And I think, sometimes you'll see maybe, for example, like a campaign for a show and you'll see like, the trailer looks really good. And the poster maybe looks, pretty good, but a little bit different. So maybe somebody else made it. And then photos are like maybe somebody else's vision. And so then that's a little bit different. And then all of a sudden you get lower and lower, like down the deliverables. And stuff starts to kind of like, not be the same and kind of go all over. And for us, like, it's interesting. I almost would say that we don't necessarily want to do everything if we don't have to.
Right.
But when we find that we do, we're able to control in a good way. We're able to control kind of the overall messaging so that like if a little one inch by 1 inch, Facebook header or like Instagram post looks of good quality, that may get you to see a trailer, which may get you to see the poster, which will obviously get you to see the show.
Hopefully
I mean, that's the goal, right? But I think for us, it's the many hats we wear is, well, we'll design it, we'll photograph it, we'll direct a trailer,
we'll edit it.
Laura's an amazing producer on the back end outside of directing. So it's like, so you need somebody to like get it all done. So like Laura can cast everybody, Laura can get the time sheets done and the call sheets done. And it just takes a lot of different
Now, that's not
things.
To say we don't like to work with great people because we obviously can't do it all ourselves, as you know.
but being able to take all of that stuff and try and have it be like an overall vision, I think is what makes us this wear many hats. And then we dabble into music as well, if we can.
Scoring.
So then all of a sudden, we love doing the music portion of it, which is actually one of the biggest highlights that we get to do because we love music. But that's what it's like. Let me take this hat off. Let me put the designer hat on. Let me take this designer hat off, and let me put the photographer hat on. And then Laura gets to wear the director hat. So.
And what do you think, Matt? I mean, having worked with us, like, how would you define it?
Well, it's really, I'm so biased. I mean, for me, I wear so many hats from my end of things that it meant that we could have a meeting between the three of us that was really a staff of 20 meeting because of you were talking to the director and the costume designer and the set designer, but also the person that's pulling the like I feel like that same philosophy worked for me. I definitely think that when we're talking to other people that do it, the wonderful part is for both companies, what I did and what you guys were doing and what we did together, it allowed us to be scrappy and get something when we were building a career, when we needed to build stuff. I mean, I remember it's crazy to even think that some of our early stuff, you hadn't even done that stuff before. I mean, I didn't know.
A lot of the stuff we did, we were like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, I can do it. Sure.
Backstage photo. And like, I mean, all this stuff where it's like, yeah. And it gave us, truthfully, what I wish almost for every artist is a place to fail. But also, that's like what wonderful about high school and then college. But then I could say, now we're so old, but or I'm so old, but our early career, we had the ability to jump in and kind of play all these things so that, I think as for myself and for you guys, I think as we grow in our career, there's certain things that you mentioned, Laura, that like, I can let go of that. I'm fine for someone else to fulfill it. That's still within my scope.
Yeah.
But if I had not done that and been that for so many years, then I would not know how to communicate to that end.
Well, it's also just budget. Like, you don't have to have the biggest budget in the world to make something great. You have to have an idea and the ability to figure out how to execute it. And that's it.
Well, and also I think, say the first step is the hardest, but then like once you take that first step, you're like, well, okay. And then the next step is easier and the next step is easier, So, I mean, I think if you were going back to your original question, for younger creatives or younger artists or, even older ones, I mean, one of our favorite directors is Ava DuVernay. And she's like, she had a post recently. She only started directing, I think, when she said she was like
in her 30s,
in her mid 30s, So, and it's amazing. And she's a great storyteller. And I feel like for us, you're right, Matt, if I would have said, no, I've never done that every time you would have asked me, and then that would have shut down the project, I think we wouldn't have done many things, you know? And so I think, you can still say no, but you have to say no, comma, but we're going to figure it out.
It's like improv.
We're going to do it,
Yes, and?
Right. Yeah.
Well, in the same way as like, if we had stopped you every time we couldn't pay for something, and you're like, hey, I want to do this. And I'm like, well, we don't have funds. Like we barely have enough. We're barely paying anything right now. And you're like, but I want to. And it just opened doors. It opened pathways. And I think that's the kind of curiosity and hunger that I would hope younger artists do, because I have to say, I see far too many that are like 18 out of high school and are ready to be paid full budget expenses. And you're like, for what? Like, where have you shown? And to be honest, they're hurting themselves. Even if somebody was able to say, I'll pay you $50,000 for this. Great. But they can't deliver, and they don't have the experience of years of figuring it out.
Yeah. The secret is it can never be about the money. And if it is, I think, you see some of those stories that are quote unquote success stories that fail. But, I think that the most amazing musicians, they write songs because they love to write them, and they just so happen to get famous, And I think that's our world, is that we definitely, I mean, speaking for myself, I don't make things thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be like, the next big thing.
No.
We make it because we love it. And if other people love it or inspired by it, then that's what we're getting.
Who is it that said that quote that I love? Andy Warhol said something along the lines of, it's not for me to decide whether or not my art is good. I make the art, I put it out into the world, everybody else decides that they like it. And I've already moved on.
Yeah.
I've already moved on to the next thing. So I'm not hanging on to the feeling of, did they like this? Did they care about it? Because he's like, it's up for people to decide if our art is good. It's not up for us to like say, it's just, do people connect with it or not? You know, and then you don't sit and focus about that, you know, we just kind of move on to the next idea, really.
Well, and it's very difficult, I think, going back to the marketing discussion, it's very difficult for a production to say, well, we didn't do well because the poster, or we didn't do well because the trailer. It's like, yes, they're a part of it, but I don't think it's singularly a part of it. So it's like that's almost data that would be almost impossible to ever track. I mean, can you imagine a film trying to base it? However, for us, one of the things I love, and one of the things that I've loved in working with you guys, is the people that have gravitated towards our vision and jumped on and asked questions and been curious, and where did you find this, and where did you do this, and how did you come up with it? That, in a weird way, is kind of the proof of success, because they're asking in the same way I ask when something has inspired me. So really quickly, Laura, will you mention what a storyboard that you do? Could you just give us a definition of what that is? Some people may not know.
Yeah, well, it depends on the project, right? So for film, we're always going to try to storyboard as much as possible. I mean, you've probably seen like if you've ever watched like behind the scenes of a really famous movie or something, you'll see those drawings, right? Where it's like there's the drawings of each scene, and then it will go to the real scene, and you're like, oh my gosh, that looks just like the drawing, right? So in a really advanced storyboard, you would have actual drawings of the space with the shadow and the light and the people and everything that you're looking for. In like a quick teaser or a trailer, we'll kind of do like a hybrid process of that. Like what we did with you a lot, we'd start with a Pinterest board of like colors and looks and backdrop feelings and textures and things like that. Then we whittle that down to what we actually want to use. And then I would put together like a treatment, which is a treatment, I would say, is like, what is the feeling, right? So it uses imagery, but it's not the imagery that you'll actually have. It's like inspiration imagery of looks, you know, like say you want to film something that has, like when we did like Elephant Man or Doubt, like a very dark feeling to it, or something with more mystery and a little more intensity. Obviously, we're going to pull things, I mean, that are much more inspired in that world, not bright colors, not, you know, things like that. And then we put those together. And if we had time, which we didn't always have time at Studio 10, we would storyboard on our end to see like, okay, what are the angles? What are the shots? What are the people? What are the scenes? And then we put that all into like a storyboard. And then we have that to know what are each of the shots we want to get and what are they supposed to look like.
Well, there's a, like when you're filming, you know, which is a little bit different from theater, but theater obviously is, you know, you've got the script, and that's it. Like, I mean, there's obviously some adaptations that you can do, but it's more or less, I have the book in front of me, I'm reading the book, and it's how I interpret the book. And, you know, when you do film, it's a very similar thing, but you've also got a third element, which is not just, you know, the scene, the actors, but you've got the camera.
Yeah.
You know?
How does the camera perceive each moment?
So in theater, you know, you're not really responsible for how the audience perceives it. That's their job. You know, they get to look wherever they want. In fact, I love looking at, you know, secondary, quote unquote, secondary cast members when like the main hero, the main cast member, you know, is kind of singing their song. And what is that person up there? Are they still acting? Are they still kind of like listening to the song, you know, or whatever? So I love watching them. But when you talk about filming, you know, you really have to kind of think through, okay, so what are we going to do before we get there? And you kind of storyboard, you map it out. And then that really helps.
Control is really how the viewer sees it. So, I mean,
because the camera is the control, is kind of like
viewer.
The director is the viewer. Yeah.
So that's super important.
And things that we found out is that when you use really harsh spotlights and stuff in theater, that's your way of controlling what you see.
Right.
Whereas the camera, you don't do that on camera because you're showing them. You don't have to zero in. You're zeroing into the camera.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's all about story, I think. You know, that's the thing, is that, you know, like using, for example, like Elephant Man, the Elephant Man trailer, for an example, is that like we're not going to be able to show all of the ins and outs of, John Merrick during that little 30-second trailer, right? Yeah. But what we can do is we can give a little bit of an insight of what makes this show, directed by Matt Logan. What makes this show something that is special and different from what you may have seen on Broadway or that you may have seen, in Chicago. And so usually those, for theater at least, it rounds itself out in vignettes, little moments that we can kind of showcase costumes, we can showcase lighting, maybe we showcase the actors a little bit to give them just a chance to...
A hint of a song.
Yeah, a hint of a song, or maybe that's the background. But, really at the end of the day, it's the trailer. So they used to, it's funny because the trailers are called trailers because they used to show them at the end of movies. So you would go see a movie and then they would show new movies coming up later. They were the trailers, like at the end. And now we do them in the beginning to get people excited. And that's all that it was ever for, is that we knew the shows that you were doing, Matt, and the actors that are here in town in Nashville. I mean, they're incredible. And on the same level of Broadway in New York or Chicago. And so for us, for Matula, it was our responsibility, we felt, to say, if you've never been there, or even if you have,
here's what it'll feel like.
Here's what it will feel like,
So the storyboard, go back to the question, from minimal to more advanced, was really about how do we convey the feeling so that when somebody watches something and then walks away, they feel what that was.
Yeah.
And I think, so we're going to start our photos, which is our retrospective with, this is the retrospective of the Logan Matula years. For those of you, we did mention, so the first picture is going to come up. Now, I just want you to give me, what are your first thoughts when you see this?
Tony, my first thoughts are, this is like, did you borrow a camera to shoot this? You borrowed Joe's camera.
No, well, maybe.
Yeah, you did.
I either borrowed somebody's camera
she taught you how to,
yeah.
I remember her teaching you, this was shot at the record label I worked at in our photo studio that they were kind enough to let me use and let me have days off for rehearsing and stuff. I think it was like the first time he had really used his camera and lighting setup. Definitely. And was literally just like on the fly trying to figure it out.
To the point where I didn't know how
to turn the light
on.
You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know how to turn the light on, so I
he had to make a call to figure out how to turn the lights on properly.
I was like, it's working. Yeah, just give me 1 second, I'll be right.
Yeah.
Now, what he did know how to do, which is an interesting story in faking it till you make it, I think, is edit. Tony is like a genius in Photoshop and like Lightroom and whatnot. So he knew he could fix anything that didn't look right in camera. And he did.
For me, in the beginning of so Laura had mentioned that photography for me was like kind of a thing that I did later. So I designed first, and photography was like something I stumbled into, I guess. But I knew that if I could get a photo that was like pretty good, like, a 30% out of 100 photo, I could 70% the rest of it. Like I could make it work, which in fact, I think this may be like 2 photos, combined into one, because I didn't get like, when you take pictures of multiple people, not everybody's smiling perfectly, so like I might have had to Photoshop Carrie's face in there, or
we had to change the background color because it was like a light blue, like it was actually the color of the background.
The background color was actually the exact color of Laura's dress. And she basically blended in. So I was like, well, let's make it like that teal or, whatever. So
it was a lot of Photoshop, Matt.
Yeah,
but gosh, it was so fun.
Well, and you were referencing a historical photo from the movie Guys and Dolls. So this was from my production of Guys and Dolls, where Laura played Miss Adelaide. And we just had this incredible cast. It was definitely a launch to... It was not Studio 10's first season. It was our second, but it was our first at the Franklin Theater. So it was it was really our first on firm ground. So timely teaming up with the Matulas. Let's go to the next shot.
What's it going to be? Oh, this is like, I think this is, I don't know why, but this also, by the way, we shot this before Hamilton. Okay, this was shot before Hamilton ever did their whole series of silhouettes, like significantly before.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's important to express. But this to me is one of my favorite photographs ever. That between like the collab between you guys and the light box and the door that you had done, and like the actors, Emily and Madeline, are just absolutely brilliant in this show. But like this to me was like, and when we kind of reached art together, do you know what I mean?
It makes me cry. It makes me cry. It was definitely a piece that was in the show. But again, the way you captured it is what's allowing us to even look back and think, because it was such powerful, strong performances. I mean, again, it goes back to this wasn't a marketing photo. This was a photo from the production. But what's interesting is the way it markets the show afterwards, because it just encapsulates their performance.
Well, and from a lighting perspective, I mean, it's probably not even something you plan, Tony, but like the soft light that falls on Emily's face and Madeline's faces is like perfectly plotted. Like if you had to actually plan the light more specifically to reproduce this photo.
Yeah, this was definitely a case of like, I'm photographing what's in front of me, like, you know, amazing stuff. Like there are definitely times where we've set up shots. And this was one of those scenarios, Matt, where, you know, and I don't know, you could even obviously probably talk for days about, you know, the inspiration and the ideas that you had about, you know, Miracle Worker. But it's like, we talked a little bit about like being blind, I remember. And the reality, I think, for people that, you know, that don't know about blindness and or aren't blind is that, you know, what we discovered, or what I discovered, is that when you're blind, your retinas actually get larger, and typically you have all the light comes in to your eyes. People think when you're blind, it's dark, like it's black. And it's actually not, it's the opposite. And so I recall when we went to the theater finally, and you had created this light box that during the show, it just like, I mean, like blows out. And as an audience member, you know, you're kind of given that visceral experience of like, that is so bright, my goodness. But like, that's what she, you know, witnessed. That's what she experienced.
It's like how sunlight would feel too on her
It was
eye.
the way it was also for Annie Sullivan, because she was had very little sight.
You're right.
And she could definitely make out shapes and probably a little bit more. But I think as far as Helen Keller went, for what we know, and I don't mean to misspeak, there were certain levels. I knew she could see more when she was younger, but there were certain things she saw, but not much. And so we were trying to put the audience not only in a black and white world, because referencing the original movie, but also everything you're saying. We wanted them to experience a little bit of not the loss of sight. That sounds awful, but to think about it, to really analyze. Yeah,
I think, and photography wise, I think it was just right place, right time. I mean, Tony has a gift to see the shot, and he saw the shot, and it was all there for him to shoot, you know.
There's another one that I love that you probably don't have next necessarily, but like where her reflection is like, it's over
In
the
the
shoulder,
glasses,
and her reflection is in the glasses, you know. And it's just kind of like, this was, I mean, and again, this was earlier on, you know, at the Franklin Theater, but really getting to see what you were doing, Matt, like on stage, on this teeny tiny little stage, you know, but still making it so powerful. And again, it's like at the end of the day, it's like for us too, which we loved. And, you know, one of the reasons I think we always loved working with you and still working with you is that like, it's like stories first and then cool things, you know. I have a hard time, you know, I watch like Blade Runner or I'll watch like Tron Legacy and I'm like, it's so cool, like the lighting, you know.
I want to make cool lighting.
Yeah, I want to make cool lighting, you know. But the reality is that is all for the story. And so, you know, this to me, this photo, at the end of the day, like, Laura talks about lighting and the rim light and like the shadow and the silhouette. And it's like, for me, this just says so much more about the story than it does anything else.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
What's it gonna be?
When Tony said we need an overhaul of your branding.
Oh,
When Tony was like, hey, so it's not working.
Not working.
Well,
and
you know,
you said it in a graceful way. And I have to say, it was one of the surprises that, for as high maintenance as I am when I work with Tony and Laura, this, which was the logo for the company that I founded and ran for 9 years, the minute Tony showed it to me, it was yes, exactly. Now, I think I mentioned something about, are we going to go square, rectangle, round? But it was very vague. And some of the stuff you told me as inspiration just moved me so much to why I said yes. And yet nobody would guess that necessarily, but it's a testament to your keen observation. And I don't want to say story, because branding is a story, but
branding is a story. Yeah.
It was just so embedded in the most simplistic way. And do you want to talk about it for a minute, Tony?
Sure. I mean, I remember I don't even, nowadays, obviously we have companies that contact us for branding. And so we have long conversations, long, meetings. And then finally we'll come back and we'll do, it was like, it's a process. I recall I was like, hey, let me make something for you. I'll just send it over, And then I remember sending it over. I think our office is upstairs in our house. We got downstairs into the kitchen and it was like, he's calling me.
No, at this time we were at Marathon Village.
Oh, but I think I made it.
Well, you might have. Yeah.
Anyway, it was very short, like in terms of like sending it over. And I'm like, I show Laura the phone. I'm like, he's going to hate it. And like, you answer and you're like, oh my gosh, or whatever. And all that to say that, like, I think, we had conversations about it. I know that I saw one of your, amazing drawings that you do. And your logo or your name at the bottom, your signature, it says Matt Logan. If anybody's ever seen any of these, amazing drawings that Matt does, if you look at the bottom, his name is Matt Logan. It's very thin type and very small. And, for me, obviously all that I knew of the company at the time was that, you and Jake were obviously instrumental and founders and ran the company. But at the end of the day, I also realized it was your vision of things, Matt. And so for some reason, similar, I know a lot about fonts. And so there's a font called Knockout, which has a lot of different weights, but there's one that's very specific that's like super tall and thin. And so I think that was it. Like I literally made a circle, typed in Studio 10, put it in the middle. But
I can also recall talking about it with you.
Yeah.
And a lot of what, like the black and white was really important to Tony.
Right.
Because the black and white is sort of like the foundation of simplicity. When you start a theater production or you have a vision for the beginning of the story, it's empty first, right? It's clean, it's classic, but with a slightly modern edge, right? Like the font itself. And then you build all the color on top of that to fill the stage. And that's sort of like why the logo needed to be so simple. It didn't need to be, a flag or all these colors or like whatever. And it was like, it needed to be like, it needed to say with the font, if it was edgy, classic, modern, retro, you know what I mean? Like, but it was clean.
Yep.
And slightly stylized, right? But not overly stylized, and left this foundation for you to kind of put it anywhere. Yeah.
And I felt like the productions that I've seen so far were definitely on caliber of, it's weird to say because now it's a different saying, but like of the time of Nashville theater, let's just say, everyone says Nashville theater, it's like Broadway. And obviously what they're saying is, which is fine, is that they're just trying to complement the theater world. It's not to say the Nashville theater isn't great, but at the same time, they're trying to do that. So anyway, with branding, that's kind of what we tried to do as well. I recall, Matt, your original logo kind of had a little bit of an Americana edge, a little bit of like, rustic, tan, maybe like Leaper's Fork kind of style.
It was very 2005.
Yeah.
It was 2009.
Sure, no, but and I saw that, but what I took away from the productions, at least what I saw, was that there was a clean world to it. There was a professional
production level.
And so anyway,
you guys really gave me that permission, because I felt with the first one it was trying to relate to Tennessee, but when you stepped on board, it was, and that's really the joy of collaboration to all you listening out there, is that there is iron sharpens iron, and that there is I could get very emotional about it. I could, like, just even where you
totally. I'm not laughing at you, I'm crying with you. It's good.
Yeah, that it does, it makes you better. And I feel like when you're on your own, and I was never fully on my own, so I'm not disclosing anyone, but I felt from a design sense I was on my own. I mean, and then when you guys joined, I had collaboration in the design world of this. And we had to, for the nature of the way we worked together. But so I don't want to say that other people weren't like a great resource of, oh, I like that, or this sounds really good, but they weren't carrying the weight of it. Mm-hmm. And I think the necessity meant we had to wear a lot of hats. So I did not have other designers to collaborate with that much.
Yeah.
And therefore our collaboration started to give me liberties in ways that I felt like were me, but I didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you guys really gave me permission to embrace that angle through the Iron Sharpens Iron. So, and that's what the logo did for me. And people may look at the logo and go, something that simple could make you emotional and everything. It's like, yes, because when I even look at like what makes great shows, like why is Gypsy such a perfect show? And I think it's because it vacuum forms to whoever's delivering it. Mm-hmm. So therefore we were able to stay consistent, and yet the flexibility you were talking about to go through traditional, modern, I mean, all these different shows that would have a totally different color scheme and feel. We needed something that could fluctuate with us and yet still remain this stamp, this brand, this strong image that you could go back to. Yeah. And you nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next photo.
Dun, dun, dun. Do, do, do. Do you know what it is?
Greg, are you there? I will say the next photo, as we're bringing it up, I'll tell you what it is. It's the poster for Sound of Music. There it is. Look at that. So this was on the road because this was an add-on that year.
Yeah.
And this was the beginning of, I mean, as you can see, celebrated right there at the top, the logo. But these are where our conversations and the way I wanted to do a show, I would be like, I don't want it to look like the movie. I don't want the old feeling. And I don't think I told you much more than that because it was so early in our process. And again, we had no time.
Well,
but I remember, anyway, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I want to hear what you have to say.
No, I don't think I had very much instruction at that time. Yeah. I just think it was like, we need a poster, Tony. And I want, there's a couple of things. I knew that Light in the Piazza was going to be a color scheme and a delivery from that original production that helped me enter the world a little bit better, a little different. And that was all I knew. I told you. So, and then you came up with this, which is weird because it's Salzburg. It's 100% Salzburg. It's 100% Tennessee. I mean, it just felt so right.
Well, I think that like, I had never been to, the Swiss Alps or, anywhere. So I didn't necessarily have like a, reference.
Austrian.
Well, Austrian Alps or the Swiss Alps, doesn't matter.
They're the same.
But I knew that again, it always came back to, and something we always do is that like, okay, so, but like, why is what makes it different, And, I will say also, if we happen to look at any other posters, the love that I have for movie posters, I mean, like Drew Struzan posters, to be specific, about like, Back to the Future or Indiana Jones, and then
Star Wars posters.
The old Star Wars posters. And then you get into like BLT Communications, which they do like all the Avengers stuff. Like there's a world of movie posters out there that like, I mean, I see it, and like Laura, when we used to go to the movie theater, hopefully we're getting back there now, but like Laura would be getting tickets or popcorn or whatever, and I would be over like standing like up at the posters,
staring at the posters,
staring at it and like looking at all the details.
And he'd be like, you see, they repeated a stamp right there.
And it's not always about that. Yeah, exactly. But for me, like there's something about it. It's a moment, and it's something special. Anyway, all that to say that like I felt like selfish in the sense that like I could design movie posters for these theater productions. And
we were at that time we were at a movie theater doing theater.
Well, that's true, right?
And with this one specifically, we didn't get the lead in town early enough to shoot her to make a poster, which happened a lot. So there would be like we ended up going like a really graphic design version of a poster, and then more images with the lead in it like once we had them, like a face.
Yeah. But I recall there was this road right off of Concord in Brentwood that for some reason, perhaps it was like around the time that we had to, Laura was in Sound of Music and, or something before, and we were going back and forth, and there's this kind of giant hill that at about 5:30 every day, the sun would set. And as we know in Tennessee, in Nashville, like when the sun sets, especially in the summer months, like it makes this amazing like picture that you're seeing right on this poster.
Yeah.
And for me, like I knew that I wanted to make a movie poster of The Sound of Music. I knew that like there was this the hill alive with the sound, you know, like that kind of like, you know, like I mean it's so dramatic, right? But like I knew that I wanted to make like a the hills are alive version, you know? And so just in thinking about that, I started seeing this hill and I was like, that's a really great picture, you know, and I feel like it totally encompasses what we're trying to go for with the show, but also like the Tennessee hills, like the Nashville world. So anyway, all that to say that, you know, when Jessica finally got in town, we ended up going there and photographing her at that exact spot. I recall taking you, Matt, and you're like, where are we going?
Yeah,
and I was like,
this is like just an incline. What is going on?
And it's just because the road goes down a little bit, and when your car goes underneath, you can kind of see.
Well, and what's hilarious, I think, is people look at it and be like, "Oh, that's a stock image."
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, no.
And I could take that off, and I could show you. I could go with my phone right now, you know,
Yeah.
in as it is, you know,
It was
May. And
Jessica Gervais was our Maria, and the photo is still. I wish I had it as next up.
So
Sorry.
stunning.
That's
Yeah,
fine. No,
she's so
but-
stunning.
And like I was there, and still like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's happening right here.
Yeah.
It was just a little side street, and it was amazing.
Mhm.
Okay, let's go to I think right now, because it's still within the same season, let's go to the first trailer. So we're going to watch it, and then we're going to watch it again commenting. So first up, we have our Christmas Carol trailer.
Okay.
The very first one.
And remember when you were like, why do we need a trailer?
Right.
Oh, there might be sound that needs to happen. There it goes.
Humbug.
Brilliant.
So good. That was before it was my name on it.
That's right.
That was just, I technically was still helping with it all, but he was on his own then.
Yeah.
That's
You did
right.
send me out to the cold. with
Silent
the-
partner there.
By myself. Yeah.
I did.
And it was so amazing because we were in this alley with a hose on all the bricks over by Puckett's that Andy Marshall let us be over there late one night, and a car pulled up for lighting.
That
Yes.
trailer was so dark. Like I was like,
Oh,
just hide everything in the dark.
my favorite thing about that trailer is the humbug.
Yeah, at the very end, humbug.
Because he said it, but Tony didn't have a good way of recording the audio.
Right.
And so Tony went back to his office at the time and recorded himself saying it. So he ADR'd
Yeah.
that humbug. So that's Tony's voice, which always makes me laugh.
Don't cry for me, Argentina.
Oop, I think it's
Is it freezing for you, Matt?
yes.
Okay.
It's just so powerful.
It's blowing all the technology out.
Right.
Yeah. What do you
Um,
think when you look at that Christmas Carol one, Matt?
The power of smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
I mean, we made it for a solid $1, baby. I mean, it was
That was
just
my
like,
voice too, right? Singing
yeah.
like
And Laura
a small child. Yeah.
Laura recorded singing a cappella over that, and they added the effects. I mean, it's truly smoke and mirrors that we did what we could, but ultimately it was like, I was like, I don't know if Tony got what we need to get something good. And then luckily, I mean, you time and time again could take the roughest footage and turn it into something.
It's the power of editing, right? Like editing, like if you can manipulate fonts and graphics, and if you can manipulate story with your editing and music, and that's, I think, we're going back to what we study, which was music our whole lives.
Right.
It's understanding how, I mean, so many times you see trailers and teasers that aren't even timed to the music hits. And that just blows my mind. I'm like, how do you not hear it? You know?
Well, so like the very short idea and story about this is that, again, like I was a designer that then got a camera, and I think I'm fortunate enough in the world that I got my first camera, and it was a 5D Mark II. I still have it sitting right over here, but it is a camera that also does amazing video, really, really great video.
Yeah.
And so being able to know that we could do some video if we wanted to. And so long story short is that there's a company, Royal Shakespeare Company, the RSC in London. And, they're incredible. Obviously they do primarily Shakespeare, but they had a company called Dust House, which they were making some incredible
marketing
trailers. And so seeing them and realizing, like, okay, kind of going back in a weird way to the movie poster idea is that, so we've got movies and then we've got live theater. And in a weird way, I would never use this in a negative way, but the bait and switch that term in marketing is that you bait them and then you quickly switch it. Whoops, sorry, it's not that. You might get a product from Amazon that you thought was something else, and then you get it and it's this tiny, right?
Right.
But for us, I felt like I was like, these shows when you go see them that are live are so incredible,
cinematic,
but they feel cinematic, And so I was like, can we do like a movie version of it? Can we do like a with the real actors, with the real people, but can we make a movie kind of style trailer?
And I think in the beginning you were like, I don't even have time to think about directing the show. Why would I have time to put together a costume? But once you started to see the value of your story coming to life in a different way to give people an idea of what they were going to see, I think it was like, it was kind of a no-brainer then.
Well, and I think a lot of people think that trailers for theater shows need to be the live production, which usually ends up being more of like a show reel. Yeah. Which is still great.
And it's not designed, but the live production is designed and lit to look great when you're sitting in the theater.
Right.
It's never designed to look great on film. Right. So when you use that footage, sometimes it's a disservice to how you experience the show. And so our goal was taking the experience of what we knew the show would feel like and translating that into a trailer so that you felt like you were in the show and not just a cut off observer.
And what we felt like we got feedback on was like, oh my gosh, that trailer was really, really great. But then, what we were hoping for, which happened, was that they would go see the show and then they would go, but the show, like, it's like you watch a trailer and then the show is like, in real life, which is the power of live theater, I think.
And I think that's a very interesting point that you're exploring, because we also ran into the negative side of that and kind of going, it's not a movie they're going to see.
Right.
It's a different medium that we're reaching them in, but it's not a different medium that they're going to go see. And I really feel like that level that we were constantly asking every time, especially when there's a show like Elephant Man, where in the film he had prosthetics and in the stage version he manipulated his body. And so then we were like, well, what do we do? I mean, and I think we found, I have to say that through that discussion and it constantly being there, I feel like even later in our careers in this place, I think we really found an appropriate balance, that we were not sending anyone to a show that they thought was different.
Right.
Yeah.
But that it captured it. And in those ways, I also have to say to everyone, it was the way that we worked together to build the shows served as not only a marketing tool, but as the creator of the show, it was from beginning to end the refining process of the show. And if that makes no sense to some of you, a case in point that I do not have a picture of, but we did several shows. Tony's logo ended up being in the show. In the show Grease, the logo was a neon sign that I knew. I said, whatever you make it, we're going to be making it in neon, and it's going to be part of the show. And we did. And then also but it was the success of, like, I think it was by accident that it happened in Big River, that it was such a piece of the show in the way we did the chalkboard art for the poster. And I kind of knew I wanted to do something in the show with it. I didn't really think it would be as bold as it was, but it was a great connection. And once again, and there are many occasions of where whatever was figured out in the trailer or the shoot or the poster ended up strongly influencing the way we built it on stage.
Well, it's like that. It's that cyclical creative process where you would send us inspiration. We would make the art from the inspiration, and then you would take the thing we made from the inspiration you had sent us, which was like filtered version of it, and then put it back into the show. So it was like the cycle of creativity.
Yep. Well, I think oh, go ahead.
No. Laura, I mean, you've talked about this before, and I don't know if there was another way we could have done it. And I just don't know. Yeah. I don't know of another way. And it's also one of the things that I'm really grateful. I've said this to other people like Corey Lamel when I see what she does at Theater Bug, that I'm like, I'm so grateful that you're in my generation of creation. But specifically, I can say that to you two and just say, I'm so blessed that you're in my generation of creation.
Well, and same. We wouldn't have made any of this stuff if you hadn't let Tony make that first Guys and Doll poster.
Right, exactly. Like I feel like
I don't know this guy, but yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I try and give credit where credit's due, like as much as I possibly can. And I feel like, if I ever get compliments about something, obviously, yes, I put my hard work into it and my experience and my talent, whatever. But a lot of times, the thank you. Somebody says, oh my gosh, this is amazing. The thank you comes in a way of, I was merely like executing on was either on stage or that was, Matt's original idea or something, and we all kind of do it together. And
we all just have to be the best that we can be at our craft. And if we put that all together, it hopefully makes something solid.
Yeah.
So,
well, and exactly. We saw things the same and we also didn't. And that's the beauty, was that there were things that I don't want to say fought over, but we had
some fair fights, but always they existed for the end goal.
Yeah.
That we never fought with. I don't think we ever disagreed based on our own personal needs.
Well, here's the deal, right? Here's where it's super important. In any collaborative work, I feel like you have to have somebody on your team or in your, camp that can look at anything that you've done, even if you love it, and go, I don't like it. And be not only strong enough to be able to say that to you,
to have a reason,
but also I mean, I'm sure, those of you guys that are out there that like either have been in shows or you're creatives or you're photographers, like you probably have those friends that love everything you do. Could literally take a picture of the floor and they're like, it's amazing, And so that's fine.
Best
right?
show yet.
Best show yet. Yeah, it's fine to have those people. That's great. But I think it's important to have somebody that's like, is that a picture of the floor? Did you mean to like that kind of feedback back and forth?
It's asking really intelligent questions. And I think we always all did that of each other. Great. You want it to be this color. Why? Why does it need to feel that way? How does that affect the lighting? What is the end result of how people will feel when they experience that color? I mean, it was like, it's always.
We weren't going to let you get away with it, Matt. If you were like, I want this, and we're just like, okay, sure, fine.
On the timeline also with the timeline that we were on, the output through the year, I mean, we talk about one poster being done, and then you guys would end up doing how many iterations of that design?
Yeah.
From a Facebook banner to individual things, to social medias, to posters, to print ads. So it was to do as many shows and fundraisers as we were doing in a year. It was constant. And I think if there wasn't synergy, it would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I don't think we would have continued working together because it
No.
would have been taken too much to try and say, oh my gosh, you did that for Sound of Music? No, that's not Sound of Music. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, and we always just encourage each other to be better. And I think that is the best kind of creative relationship where it's like, oh, let's see what else can we try? What else can we try? You know, and giving each other permission to do that makes for a really healthy creative relationship.
Yeah. Well, and I think also just to make sure also, again, to give credit where credit's due, to mention, I mean, you talk about all of that stuff, Matt. It's like when we were all at Studio 10, you know, the family, you know, of yesteryear was incredible. I mean, you know, I can't necessarily name everybody, but obviously you're talking about sets, you're talking about Mitch White, you know, and like, I mean,
the costume department, stage management,
you know, marketing, with Logan and Jim and like all of everybody that was a part of, you know, again, the overall process that obviously at the end of the day, they see maybe a poster that I made or a photograph that Laura's in, or they go see the show and, you know, you're standing in the back and you kind of made the costumes and I mean, there's so many more people that are involved, but you know,
and translating the vision, you know, down through every single person who works on it down to the cast was such an important part of it as well. And hopefully the marketing always helped do that, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I know, case in point, every single actor was like, yes, thank God I'm going to get some shots from the Matulas. And then we got the show.
Well,
and they still
I love them too.
Banner and their...
Yeah, I know there were many times where I was like, I know we don't need more photos, but can we do more photos? Like, I mean, like, and you know what? Here's the deal too. I respected that, you know, some of those actors were in town. Some of those actors came from out of town, you know, and I didn't always, you know, it was selfish at times to get their photos. I mean, in a way, you know, but I also knew that, you know, if they could use them for their next show, or
like if Jen Rios is kicking her leg all the way up to her face, like, can we take a picture of it backstage?
I am like, you know, not doing my job if I'm not asking to take more photos.
Yeah.
You know? So
it was so good. Okay, let's go through some of these fast. So give like, let's go back to the photos, Glenn. And I think picking up where we were right after Sound of Music photo, let's be, because I have a lot. We don't have to do them all, but we've got some.
No, let's do like speed round. We're ready.
Yeah. Let's do like first impression when you see it. What do you think of when you see it? Okay.
Do you want to go first?
You go.
Okay. I don't know how he managed to make this look this way. This was like, I don't even remember what this bar was called, but this just makes me happy. Like the experience that I had being in this teaser and photo and getting to sing with these ladies was like literally the best thing ever. Mama! So I watched this and I just feel like joy. Like I just feel pumped.
Yeah. It was at Sapphire. And like, again, you made something that in the moment we're like, is this going to look good? And it looks like dynamite.
And there were all like 6 or 7 people there, but they were all right in front of the lens.
Well, I had 2 lights that I rented that I put some red gels in front of. And then I think I almost started a fire because they started to like melt the red gels because I didn't quite know how close. Just so many things that were just like,
but they look great,
you know? Yeah. And then getting all those guys in the front that I'm sure just, you know, use their time. And we just asked for them to kind of volunteer.
They were so lovely.
You know? Yeah.
Hooting and hollering and having a good time.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
In the front there.
Oh, this makes me so happy. Okay, this was like
hat,
the millinery, but like smoke and mirrors, first of all, because the costumes were mostly not done, right?
Right. No.
But I remember
we had to shoot this. I want to say it was close to 3 months before the production.
Yeah. I remember Vanity Fair is what comes to mind when I think of this, because that's definitely what we were aiming for, is like Annie Leibovitz style, Vanity Fair, high fashion. And I think Tony did such a great job with the edits on these. You did such a great job making me look so fancy. And I just had fun being there.
And Sandra Nottingham killed it with the makeup.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that this is the photo, but there's another photo that like, I don't know who did the hats, but they brought the hat and they put it on. And then Matt, you go, what if we put it on backwards.
And then it was amazing.
And it was yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, this to me just is just
This
yeah.
was just
This was
fun
a fun
art.
day.
You know, this felt fancy and fun.
Yeah, fancy and fun. Yeah.
That was the other thing we love to do when we weren't stressed out of our minds. Photo shoots were so much fun to explore together.
So fun.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay, yeah.
This is collaboration is the word that I would think of, because this is Tony had the idea to have
And this
your
is
old roommate
Evie Coates, yeah.
Evie draw. He was like, let's do hand-drawn logos. And she drew these just gorgeous series of, and she brought them to our office one day, these like giant, we still have them.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Pages of hand-drawn versions of logos. And then Tony scanned those in and kind of like retrofitted them to work in these art posters.
Yeah, yeah. This was
That
just
was
like
one of the most fascinating series, that whole program that you did of the season. It was amazing to me.
well, and it's interesting too, because we actually, and again, just figuring it out as we go along, we realized that we had to create season art like well before anything was ever decided, you know? So
Yep.
this was a blue and black and white kind of series art series.
Where the whole season was.
Where the whole season was there. But then, you know, those of you that know the Hank Legacy poster, it's kind of this, but
it's like a burnt orange.
It's the orange version, you know?
Yeah.
So this was a brochure, that we basically created, you know, for the beginning of the whole season, just to kind of like show everything.
And Evie had drawn that silhouette as well on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so Tony kind of took her stuff and kind of incorporated into these art posters. And gosh, I love this series.
Laura, always. So I, you know, as a creative, I go up and down and up and down and up and down, you know, and I love what I'm doing and I hate what I'm doing and I love what I'm and it's a bit, you know, a bit of like, you know, I don't know, just craziness, I guess, but that is the creative world. But Laura always is inspiring me and saying, why don't you try this? Like, get out of your element, basically, you know. I design on a computer, but why don't you go to an art museum? Why don't you go to an art gallery, you know, or why don't you get off the pen and paper and draw? So anyway, this was an effort to collaborate with another great artist in town, in Evie, and also to kind of get out of my element a little bit, because these were evident, you know, at the end, all created design-wise in graphic design. I photoshopped or photographed everything, but they're real elements. Like I could literally dig in our drawer right here and get you this Hank Legacy drawing, and I can physically hold it and smear it if I wanted to.
And I think he nailed. I mean, challenging himself.
Yeah,
it
was
Wait,
fun.
speed round.
Go.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
Oh,
Fiddler on the Roof. Yes,
this is like one of my favorites too.
Me
And
too. I think we talked on this one, and then you came up with it, and it was like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah. Well, you know, I tried to do like a ton of research, you know, about the community and the world of, you know, the people, the characters that are in Fiddler on the Roof. And, you know,
and the Jewish community in Russia at that time.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, and this was a combination. I've got these books over here that are very old type books from Taschen. And you can basically, there's a card in the back where you can download all of the high resolution frames and the graphics and things like that. And so I actually went in, and they have different sections. They've got Italian, Russian, German. And so I went to the Russian section, and I ended up downloading all of these frames and these different pictures and stuff. And so this was a conglomerate.
He took a bunch of different little frames and like conglomeration and put them all together.
Yep. And then that's what that was. And then
I knew I didn't want Broadway's Fiddler on the Roof.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You know, the typical things that we've seen over and over. It was truly wanting to be more authentic to its culture.
Yep. And you look really closely, and you've got the sickle and hammer like in the moon back there. You know what I mean? So it's like there's just, I love these little things sometimes that, like, if I get into people looking at something and going, oh my gosh, oh wait, oh, you know, those little things.
And I'm also fairly certain we contacted a friend in town to make sure that the Hebrew was correct.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Yeah.
So awesome. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Okay. Yes.
And this was so
Emily.
fun. I remember you saying like you didn't want it to feel like tacky
80s.
is a horrible word, but 80s.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, to me, every time I saw a production, it was bound and tacky.
Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't bound in real people. It was let's celebrate the 80s tacky instead of the real people that these women were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I love the color. The color was the biggest one. We have actually a backdrop downstairs. This backdrop, this teal, that interestingly enough, Superior Paper doesn't even make anymore. They make a version of it, but they don't even make this color. And you can hue it, but we love the natural color.
Yeah.
And then the very short story of my history is that my mom and dad were both hair people. They were both hairstylists. In fact, they met at Barbizon Beauty School. My dad was a barber, and my mom was a hairdresser. Yeah. So seeing the world, interestingly enough, seeing the world of this, hair dryer and the curls, and we just thought it was hilarious that like it doesn't fit.
Yeah,
but we couldn't go into that hair dryer. Yeah, that's right. And that's kind of that story, right?
For me, the feel of the show was I never wanted to displace it from the 80s because that's the true writing. But I just thought if it was in the 80s, it would have retro. So everything was retro. It was referencing the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next shot, which is the publicity shot that's very similar.
Oh, yeah.
We kind of tied it in with the magazine and just brought everything to a retro feel rather than a dated, bad, tacky.
Yep.
And I loved it, and the way you designed the set and everything, I just loved it. Yeah.
Well, and we get the question, people said they want it to be vintage, and the question that we always have is, do you want it to be a photograph that we see in 2021 from the 60s vintage, meaning like it's worn, it's tattered, it's faded, or do you want it to look like it's 1965
and you just shot the photo,
and that Life magazine, when you brought those magazines out, like I was like, gosh, like. Yeah, just the whole feeling of it really made sense, and so that's why we made it as vibrant
was a fun
as
one.
It was. Yeah,
so fun. Okay, next one.
Oh, Megan. Oh, she's just magic. The costume was gorgeous.
Yeah,
I was lucky enough to be in the show, and I remember just every day feeling like we were wearing candy. It was like,
oh yeah,
my dress was quite different, a little bit
Yours
darker.
is the next photo. Let's go to the next photo.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So that was Glinda, and here's the Wicked Witch.
Okay, so this, my favorite, quick story about this is Tony and I knew we wanted it to feel like the poppies were kind of like, is she laying down? Are they falling on her? Like it didn't kind of floating kind of vibe. And so we went to Michael's. Obviously, we had no money to do this.
Right.
So we spent our own money, right? So we went to Michael's and we're like, well, we can only afford this many flowers. So I think we bought 20 flowers, and then we painted the inside of them black because they were white and yellow. Yeah. So we hand painted each of them black. And we put them on this green piece of foam as close together as we could. It was just a square. And then when Tony shot the photo, he put that square in different places around me and kept shooting the photo. So then the final composite is each of those, and he composited them all together. So that was a very challenging edit. And then he had these other ones, he would cut them out and then have them fall. I mean, that to me is some of his most gorgeous editing.
This is that selfish world, Matt, where you you have all this stuff and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, I know we don't need this, but I'm making this poster. I'm making this, I'm doing this.
We made so many posters for the show you didn't need. There was a poster of every main character because
we've got screen print
the costumes were so beautiful, and Sandra did such a gorgeous job with the makeup. So it was like, well, can we just do something with it?
Yeah. Let's go to the next photo, which is of the same show. So Wizard of Oz was just a big experience for our whole company. I mean, building it was basically Aaron Parker and I almost entirely built the entire show over this leading up to it, which we couldn't believe we did. And it was such a success of the heart to do it.
It really was. It was such a family feeling too from every ensemble member.
You that Tony, you did all the projections for the Skirmerhorn event. So it was the look. I mean, the way that people received it along with our teamwork. This made this show so special. It is a special show to begin with.
Yeah.
But,
well, we did green screen for the first time too, where we had the wizard getting in and out of his balloon that didn't exist, but we shot it. We had a basket, and you green screened me flying on a broom, and and these were the backstage portraits, which became something so special when we did shows at the Skirmerhorn because they were so quick. We got to do 2 days of shows, and that was it. And so these moments where we could run to Tony's photo booth in between our scenes and like have these special memories captured with all of the cast members, I think became really, really important to us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, these moments.
Let's go to the next one.
Special, yeah.
Woo-wee. Remember we got a car for this one?
Yeah.
I think I don't remember who had the hookup
called
for the
in.
car. Yeah.
Jake called in and got that car delivered.
That car, we had so much fun shooting with that car. This is where we started to up our game, right?
Yeah, this is Mama
We
Rose.
built, like,
Anne
a
Gurley is
whole-
Mama Rose.
Yeah,
And
a whole
the
lot.
trailer. So I'll take this moment to tell you, everyone who's listening, thank you. I know this is a long interview, but there's a lot to cover.
Sorry.
And if you go to matula.com, MA2LA.com, you can see all the trailers that they made through the years, including other stuff that was not collaboration for Studio 10. But it is a great rabbit hole to get lost in. Because this is another great trailer. And so I would encourage you. We spent a ton of time. Let's go to the next photo because I think it's Mia of Gypsy as well. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I remember walking into the lobby of Studio 10's offices, and you guys fought. Like, I feel like there was a minute we had to like pull you along to agree to all of the demands we had for how much set we wanted to shoot. And I feel like this was one of the ones where you're like, okay, you asked for it. We're doing all this. And you built this whole like dressing room scenario, the couch and the mirror. And it just made for such a cool vibe for her to get to sit in there and to really experience like the glamorous Gypsy Rose Lee, you know? It was so fun.
Y'all did all
and
those posters of the old shows.
Yeah,
Oh,
she's
right,
such
yeah.
I like she's so incredible. I love Mia.
Yeah, this was a real career turning moment for Mia. She was so spectacular, and she'd always been great, but this was a defining moment to see that.
She was magical. Yeah, she was magical.
I just love her so much, and I was so proud of her. Okay, let's go to the next photo. But I think the reason we were so overwhelmed was we were coming out of Wizard of Oz, building straight into Gypsy, which was huge. It was like, we don't have time. Okay,
they're just huge shows. Speaking of huge shows.
Speaking of huge shows, this was the time that we were all honored to collaborate with Tennessee Performing Arts Center to open the Broadway series, which was a historic event in Nashville, Tennessee. This actually this full photo ran in the Tennessean Weekender.
Oh, right.
I mean, it was just thanks to Kathleen O'Brien and Christy Dortch, who just really championed us and gave us an incredible opportunity. Eden Espinosa coming down for this promo shoot. I mean, talk about a change.
Yeah,
this was a moment that I will
we all knew we had to kind of kick it up a notch, you know, and I think as challenging as we definitely all challenged each other, you know, and I think we achieved something really gorgeous. I mean, and the set that you guys built and the costumes and it was, but these photos and this trailer are some of my favorites. And even like we have a whole dance video that we shot with Caleb and Anna. Caleb, who's now, you know, Moulin Rouge on Broadway. It was stunning. And Stephen Moss lit it with these great footlights, and they did this whole Argentinian tango, I believe. And we have a whole video that we've never really used. We used like 2 seconds of it in the trailer. And we just got all this incredibly beautiful content because everybody kind of committed to making this day of press stuff really kind of fabulous.
Yeah. This is again one of those scenarios where it's like, I'm not having to do much because it's all just
it's all there.
Of me, you know?
Well, you say that, but they were mirror tiles in a black room. With people, with Laura and someone else throwing rose petals over the mirror.
I was on a ladder throwing rose.
Zoom out, and we've got somebody like Laura's over here with throwing rose petals.
And we would have to pick them up, and they were dusty from being on the floor, and so like we'd have to pick the dust off of her dress.
So like an interesting to go into like the photography world for a second, like the challenge of light in the interesting like world. So like we did have these. I don't even know how big they were, like 5 feet by like 8 feet tall, like Mylar mirrors.
We borrowed them from Belmont University.
And they were on wheels. And so we made them some sort of like a pentagonal or, hexagonal like thing around her. And then Stephen Moss and I like figured out so that light that's in the background is actually like in the foreground. It's in front of us. So it's not only lighting her from the front, but it's also lighting the mirror.
It's getting just the right angles.
And then lighting her from behind. So
and just the right angle of the mirror so you don't see the camera as well.
Right. And then there's another light, and then there's mist in the air. Like, so there's so many fun little moments, and then not getting me in it. Like I can't, where can I stand so that I don't get in it?
That was so fun.
There were so many photos from that shoot that were just, every one of them could have been a cover.
Well, she's just stunning.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Like,
I didn't have to do
take
much.
A bad photo of Eden.
I know.
She's gorgeous.
I recall we had to call it. We were like, let's just be done, because I could just take photos all day.
Okay, let's go to the next one.
James.
Yeah.
And I love this photo because it's just art. It's so the play. It's so the moment. And this was done in early rehearsals. Like, we were not really even ingrained in the play. But James just channeled it. He looks stunning.
Well, James is just such a great actor and such a great human. And when you get the chance to work with great humans, it changes your work, because he brings
his brow.
Yeah,
I mean,
he brought so much story and so much experience to just a single photo that you can't manufacture that emotion. You know, that's him bringing everything he knows as a human being to that photo, and you can't fake that. Like, he's just he's sharing his experience with us in that moment, and all you got to do is capture it.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is why every actor wanted to do a show with Studio 10 so the Matulas could do a portrait of them. I mean, just imagine that. It's so beautiful on top of it. It's expressive, all that. But imagine having a keepsake of a show where you look so good. As well as appropriately the story. Okay, let's go to the next one.
This is the Ryman? Yeah, because it's with John Mark.
Oh, yeah.
This was like just a life memory. Do you know what I mean? There are moments that are burned into your brain. Standing on stage at the Ryman in front of a full house, singing with literally my favorite singer in the world, John Mark, a Johnny Cash tune in Nashville. Like, for me, that moment is not just the photo; it's like the moment.
There's more boxes that could.
There's not another box that could be checked in, like the perfect costume. Thank you, Matt, and like the hair, like. And Fallon helped with my make. Like, it was just like that is a perfect moment. Yeah, I just remember that as a perfect.
There's
moment.
So many moments too, Matt and Laura, where like so Laura's in the shows, which is appropriate, and she's amazing. But I'm here like trying to photograph it, and I recall, you may or may not show like a moment from Les Mis, but I turn on work mode, so I'm photographing, and I'm not really like in the moment necessarily. This moment was definitely one of those moments where like I recall like just seeing the realization of Laura's hard work and effort, and Matt and Jake and Studio 10 getting to the Ryman, and like just all of these things together. And so you have to like, there's moments I know specifically in this show and in Les Mis, but specifically in this one, where like I kind of had to stop photographing for a minute and just kind of like compose myself for a little bit, because you start to get kind of like, is this it? Like, is this real?
Are we doing the thing?
And then back to work. But
no, that was for me. Skirmahorn, the first show we did at Skirmahorn, going out to do the stage speech, overwhelming.
Sure,
overwhelming for me.
That was Les Mis, right?
Les Mis, sold out crowd.
Yeah.
And them screaming just for a curtain speech, which was insane.
Tony was sitting in the audience next to Corey Lamel.
Yep.
When I sang my song with the spotlight on, sobbing like a baby, to the point where she had to lean over and ask him if he was okay.
I think sobbing is like this, like the smallest term you could possibly describe, because I was like couldn't even control myself, like just shaking, crying. And it was definitely, Corey, like in her sweetest, "Are you okay?" Like maybe thought I was not.
And I was up there singing "I Dreamed a Dream," like living.
Yeah. And it was just a little bit too much. Yeah. But
anyway.
Well, that night, opening night of TPAC and the Broadway series of Evita, where our speech was this brilliant video that you guys did as a curtain speech. Experiencing that, I mean, just as a kid who grew up here, and Jake and I, you know, we were kind of getting into, we just wanted to film curtain speeches, and then we got to the Ryman, and we're both like, no, I'm going to be on that stage. We're going to walk out there, and we're going to stand on that stage. We were both like, we're Tennessee kids. This means
we're going to take a selfish.
Yeah. Well, and then also selfishly for you, Matt, you know, you're talking about that picture of James, but, you know, I know that I got some, you know, pretty amazing photos of you, you know, that just are, you know, they're good, but like it celebrates a moment, you know.
Okay, speed round, guys.
Speed round.
Okay, next. I know we're almost done.
We're almost done, everybody.
Yeah.
Karen is just, and like my favorite in this series is actually one of the portrait ones on Gray as well. She just like inhabited. You put the clothes on her, and it was like.
Yeah,
it was instant transformation.
Instant transformation. Yeah, she's just a stunning.
She's as cold as ice.
She's a stunning actor from top to bottom, and to pose in a photo as a character requires so much commitment as an actor. Like having just the right costume and just the right makeup and just the right hair and just the right photographer isn't enough. The actor, the person in the middle of the composition has to be inhabiting it.
Well, this is one of those shows. You know, that you did, Matt, where, you know, way marketing wise competing with a movie that just came out or had come out.
No, like, Prince Caspian, I think, came out around the similar time, like one of the movies.
And it was just like, okay, how do we compete with that type of marketing when, you know, this is, I say just a theater show, but like a theater show, you know, and so, I mean,
and the design
hair,
for the show,
costuming, the everything
was so cool.
Yeah, it allowed us to do that.
It was a magic moment when we saw her finally for the first time in all the getup.
She's so amazing.
Yeah,
it was. Okay, let's go to the next one.
Oh yes.
This is the same season. I wish these are some of my favorite season, like that when we talked about season posters, like the blue one earlier with the hand type. These were the season posters. So there was one for Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and there's one for Battle of Franklin and Grease. And they were these idea of doing a silhouette, and then inside the silhouette of something that was iconic from the show were the other layers, you know, of story from the show. And I feel like Tony just like
this one was a late edition that we added to the season, I believe, and so it was like trying to like figure out what are those elements. And I remember, you know, Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe was kind of not easy, but easier because it was like the lion, and then inside the wardrobe, and then the witch. You know what I mean? It kind of all just worked, you know, layers. And I recall, you know, really just having to figure this one out. But you know, the family, the Campbell family, and just everybody that was a part of this, I think we were well along the way. And then we had to make this poster to kind of have something, and it just really, like, so many things kind of, you know, helped me along. The colors and the circle design, and, you know, just I never, you know, unfortunately got to experience, you know, Glenn Campbell on the Ryman stage, but just thinking about, you know, what it would have been like, you know, and seeing that image there, and you know, there's just a lot of things happening in this, but yeah.
Well, it fully encapsulates, for those that didn't get to see the show or don't know as much about it, the layers that Tony puts in every piece. You could learn more and more and more about, especially in our process, even as we started with colors. And no matter what, I knew it was going to be those orangey sunrise colors with the teal and slight bits of blue, and the way you just pulled them all together. And even the logo took us a while to land on, but we kind of had an idea, and it's 100%. It's just, and the hard work I look back to, and we can go to the next shot as I say this, but the next shot is the last shot. And the hard work that we just really more meticulous about in everything from my points of view to your hard work. I look back on all of these, and it's still 100% knocked out of the park. Like, I still feel that.
Even into the woods?
Wow.
Into the Woods.
Wow.
Here's the thing.
Into the
Here's the thing.
Woods.
Here's the thing.
I don't know if I would say that about Into the Woods, but it was solid, but it wasn't. No.
I have a hard time.
Oh my gosh.
This, I don't know, dark isn't the right word, but I have a hard time. Like I recall, Matt, when we did, Christmas Carol, and we did it like 3 times or something like that. I recall each time taking photographs, of Chip and being like, we're one like click away from Jack the Ripper, right? Like it's Christmas Carol, but is it too dark? Is it not dark enough? And I recall with Into the Woods, for some reason, that to me, just like it was a little maybe darker than Sondheim in the
What's
the
funny
poppiness
is
of it.
I think knowing
But,
it was one of those where we had to say, do you love it or does it work?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like, it's fine. But like that, I think if I pick one that was the big struggle from photos through like design, that was it. But I loved the show. So it was like, we got there. But this one, Frankenstein. So this is Nat McIntyre, right? Because we didn't have.
We wanted him for the show because he read for the part in the workshops, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't do it.
But luckily we got him so this was like the art poster version. And I remember we had these 5 posters with nothing in it. They were just colors. So the Frankenstein one was like flames up to this teal. And it had this sort of like, we wanted that, I wouldn't say modern. It was like industrial England with a sort of modern, very like deconstructed artistic style to it. Like it was a weird combination of things that kind of it needed to work here. And I love the effect that you did with the red and the teal.
Yeah.
Well, what's amazing is however we got there, the colors of the red and teal that you see in the upper part, that's one of Morgan's dresses.
Yeah.
It was exactly that fabric.
That's right.
I don't think we thought about it. I mean, it's just kind of weird how it comes about.
Yeah.
Well, like some things are happy mistakes, you know what I mean? And, those of you guys out there that are Photoshop, people that know Photoshop, there's layers of Photoshop that you can manipulate. And because there's Photoshop layers, and then you make one like what's called a multiply layer, and it makes it look a little bit different on top of something else. And when you get down to the very bottom, if you have like a black and white image and you choose like either difference or exclusion, it all of a sudden takes whatever if it's a black and white image and you put a color over it, it takes those opposite colors and just like really like twists them around. And I think for me on this one particularly, I was like, I kind of had these great photos of Nat, and then I was like, okay, now what can I do in Photoshop that just like goes somewhere you would never go with a regular photo, And I ended up, just really messing around with different layers and the texture and all of that
scientific stuff. It's very much like I don't want to say a petri dish, but like you start to look to elements of science and the way that like a negative is to a photograph, and just all of it's layering in.
Yep. And you almost don't even see that it's like a photograph. There's little elements that kind of draw you in, like, oh, that's a nose. Oh, that's an ear.
And then you start seeing the scar, the sewing and everything.
And I also do recall that, like, well, because we weren't sure if this was the challenge with a lot of these posters, right? Is he going to do it? Is he not? You know? So we were like, we had some really good ones that he was like looking right into the camera, but then we were like, let's just have it be any Frankenstein's monster,
and I think that for those of you going back to the marketing challenge, particularly in regional theater, that's a great point that you're bringing up, that 9 times out of 10, the material had to be created before the show was created.
Right.
And so there were so many questions, like we were talking about Into the Woods. I think now if we knew what the show was, we could have gone back and it would have been a different poster. But we were, both myself who should have given you the communication to begin with, didn't have the information to give you.
You didn't know what it was yet.
No.
Well,
and I got better about it, but it was very tough to how do you take these shows, especially when you know you want to do something different and not just what's been done, and be able to walk down that road to set all those early things that are so important, but yet give room to grow. And so,
well, that's where we're always good at pivoting. You know what I mean? I feel like when we realize that, oh, your vision for the show has changed, or you realize that something was evolving, we would always evolve the marketing to work with it, you know, because you have to. You can't just be like, well, this is my thing and this is what it is, and end of story. It's like, no. We have a responsibility to sell tickets to the show so this theater company can exist, right? And whether it's the theater company or any of our other clients, it's like, what do you want to get out of it? And that's what we need to make sure that you're getting, you know, as best as possible, or being reasonable with you about what you can really expect to get out of it. And like, there's so many other photos and posters and logos and things. And I'm like, oh, what about this one?
The one for Frankenstein specifically that I love that you let me do, Matt, was that, you know, we did this one that was of
Jared.
Yeah. Well, it was basically like a blue and red. So when you have 3D glasses on, is he going to go get it?
Yeah.
So you have like this image where essentially if everything that you see is just blue, but then you put a red filter over it, anything that's red actually completely takes all of the blue out. Anyway, I just thought about the monster inside of, inside of Frankenstein and all of that, how that works. So
sorry, I wasn't going to get it, but I didn't want my computer to die.
Oh,
I was like, oh my gosh.
Well,
anyway, we're probably tired of hearing us talk anyway. It's fine.
Well, I think it's good drawing it to a close. Like, I hope that there's been some inspirational for you guys in the audience that either knew who we were and what we did or didn't. Again, if you're curious, please go to their website. They have so much brilliant work that is far beyond just what we did in collaboration. We also collaborated on a TPAC anniversary event that was such a joy and a huge honor to do. And that was back in the early part of the year. And thank you so much, Elaine.
Thanks, Elaine.
And
you're coming earlier. Thank you so much.
We have a lot to say, and I apologize. Thank you for anyone that was patient to sit through it. We really love what we do. We love the chances, and I really hope for the arts in Bellevue, the arts in Nashville, the arts in Middle Tennessee, that we can look back and be grateful for the experiences and be very hopeful for the new ones that come. And I think as now everyone's starting to get back into live performance, I know the Matulas and myself are excited to witness it. And we're very excited to hopefully participate as we market new projects, film new projects, build new projects. We're really excited to see the world get back to performance specifically with live work.
Yeah. Especially live theater. Do we want to leave on the Evita trailer?
Sure. That's a great idea. Glenn, is that possible to do that? And we'll just exit out with the Evita trailer?
I think that's a yes.
Here we go. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. We so appreciate you watching, and I hope you found some great information and some inspiration. Thank you, Laura and Tony. And we will see you all soon somewhere on a live stage, hopefully.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.